When did you realize your parents never loved you? The dusty photo album slipped from my hands and hit the attic floor with a soft thud, scattering pictures across the wooden planks like fallen leaves. I'd been looking for my old yearbooks to show my roommate when I stumbled across this box marked Sarah's things in my mother's careful handwriting. Sarah. I'd never heard that name before. My hands trembled as I gathered the scattered photos. Baby pictures, but not of me or my younger brother Jake. This child had wispy blonde curls where mine had been dark and unruly. Delicate features where mine were sharp and angular. In every single photo, my parents looked radiant, my mother's smile genuine and wide, my father's eyes crinkled with joy I'd never seen directed at me. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, born March 15, 1999. Our perfect angel. The inscription on the back of one photo was dated just 3 months before my birth. My stomach dropped. I was born June 18, 1999. 3 months. This Sarah had lived for 3 months, and I'd never known she existed. I dug deeper into the box with shaking fingers. A tiny pink dress with tags still attached. A silver rattle engraved with Daddy's little girl. A hospital bracelet so small it could have fit around my thumb. And at the bottom, 2 leather journals I recognized immediately. My parents had been writing in similar ones my entire life, always guarding them like state secrets. The first entry in my mother's journal was dated March 16, 1999. Sarah smiled today. A real smile, not gas like the nurses said. She's absolutely perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes. Richard says she has my eyes. I've never felt love like this, pure, overwhelming, all-consuming. She completes us. I flipped through pages of gushing entries about first sounds, first holidays, first everything. The writing grew shaky toward the end, desperate. Medical appointments. Sleepless nights. And then, abruptly, it stopped. June 8, 1999 was the final entry. We buried our angel today. I don't know how to keep breathing. Richard says we should try again soon, that another baby might help heal this hole in our hearts. But nothing could ever replace our Sarah. Nothing. My birth certificate said June 18, 10 days later, I'd enter the world as their consolation prize. With numb fingers, I opened my father's journal to a random page dated on my 5th birthday. Maya's party was today. She seemed happy enough with the princess theme, though she'll never be our little princess the way Sarah was. I catch myself comparing them constantly, wondering what Sarah would have looked like at 5, how she would have laughed, whether she would have had Linda's grace instead of Maya's clumsiness. It's not fair to Maya, but I can't help it. Linda and I talked about it last night. We both feel it. We tried to love Maya the way we loved Sarah, but it's like trying to force puzzle pieces that don't fit. Maybe that makes us terrible parents. Maybe some bonds just can't be replicated. The words blurred as tears filled my eyes. 22 years old, and I was finally understanding why nothing I did ever seemed good enough. Why their praise always felt hollow. Why Jake, born 4 years later when their grief had softened, received the easy affection that had always eluded me. I wasn't their daughter. I was their placeholder. I sat in that dusty attic for 3 hours, reading every single entry in both journals. The picture they painted grew clearer and more devastating with each page. My father's journal, March 3, 2003, my 4th birthday. Maya threw a tantrum today when we didn't get the exact cake she wanted. Sarah would have been grateful for anything. She had such a sweet temperament, even as a baby. Maya's demands exhaust me sometimes. I know it's wrong to compare, but Sarah never would have screamed like that. My mother's journal, December 15, 2005, Maya's teacher says she's struggling with reading. I found myself thinking that Sarah would have been a natural reader. She was so alert, so intelligent, even at 2 months. Had to stop myself from saying it out loud. Richard and I agreed we'd never tell Maya about Sarah, but keeping the secret feels like carrying stones in my chest. Sometimes I look at Maya and feel guilty for not loving her enough. Other times I feel guilty for trying to love her at all, like I'm betraying Sarah's memory. The entries weren't all cruel. There were moments of genuine affection, particularly when I was very young. But they were always tainted, always followed by comparisons to their angel baby who could do no wrong because she'd never lived long enough to disappoint them. My father's journal, June 18, 2007, my 8th birthday. 8 years since we lost Sarah. 8 years since Maya arrived. I used to think God took one daughter and gave us another, but now I wonder if Maya was meant to teach us something else entirely. She's so different from what Sarah would have been. Loud where Sarah was peaceful. Stubborn where Sarah was agreeable. Maybe that's good. Maybe we needed someone who couldn't be replaced, even if we spent years trying to reshape her into something she's not. That entry gave me a flicker of hope until I read the next one, dated the same day, in my mother's journal. Richard thinks Maya is growing into her own person and that we should appreciate her differences. But I see Sarah in every milestone Maya reaches and feel the loss all over again. Sarah's first day of school. Sarah's first lost tooth. Sarah's first everything, except Maya gets to live them and Sarah doesn't. I've tried therapy. I've tried prayer. But I can't stop loving a ghost more than a living child sleeping down the hall. God help me, I can't. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Hey, are you coming to my graduation party planning meeting? Mom's freaking out about centerpieces. Jake's graduation party. The family gathering I'd been dreading for weeks because I couldn't afford to take time off work and their disappointment in my retail job at Target was palpable. The same party where my mother had insisted I wear the blue dress I hated because it photographs better and where my father would undoubtedly introduce me to relatives as Maya, who's still figuring things out while beaming with pride about Jake's acceptance to State University. I stared at my reflection in the dusty attic mirror across from me. 22 years old, working 2 jobs to afford my shared apartment, struggling through community college part-time. No wonder they saw me as a failure. I was competing against a dead saint who would have been a doctor or lawyer or whatever perfect profession they projected onto her memory. But Jake's party was in 3 weeks. 3 weeks when the entire Morrison family tree would gather in our backyard, along with my parents' colleagues and neighbors and everyone who mattered in their small social universe. I carefully placed both journals back in the box, but not before taking photos of the most damning entries with my phone. 22 years of wondering what was wrong with me, and now I finally had my answer. The question was, what was I going to do about it? I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those journal entries burned into my vision like after images. Asterisk, we could never love Maya the way we loved Sarah. Asterisk, the words played on repeat until I wanted to scream. By 3 a.m., I was back in the attic with a flashlight, combing through the box again. This time I found things I'd missed in my initial shock, a savings account statement dated 2018 showing $15,000 set aside for Sarah's memorial garden, while they'd told me there was no money to help with my college tuition. A receipt for a $300 floral arrangement delivered to Sarah's grave every year on her birthday, March 15th, the same date they'd forgotten my own birthday 2 years running. But it was the manila folder tucked beneath everything else that made my blood run cold. Maya Therapy Records was written on the tab in my mother's handwriting. Inside were session notes from Dr. Patricia Henley, dated from when I was 7 years old. I barely remembered those appointments, only that my parents had told me I was seeing a special doctor to help with my behavioral problems. The typed summary was clinical and devastating. Patient presents with attention-seeking behaviors likely stemming from emotional neglect. Parents report difficulty bonding with child. Recommend family therapy to address underlying grief issues and attachment concerns. Parents declined ongoing treatment after 8 sessions. They'd declined 8 sessions to fix me, and when that didn't work, they'd given up. I photographed everything, my hand steadier now that rage was replacing heartbreak. The memorial garden receipts. The therapy records. Even the hospital bracelet that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. When I finally crept back downstairs, I found Jake in the kitchen making his signature 2 a.m. peanut butter sandwich, a habit we'd shared since childhood. Couldn't sleep either? He asked, not looking up from the counter. For a moment, I almost told him everything. Jake and I had always been close despite the 4-year age gap. He was the golden child, sure, but he'd never made me feel lesser for it. If anything, he seemed uncomfortable with the preferential treatment he didn't understand. Just stressed about work, I lied, sliding onto the bar stool across from him. You know, you don't have to come to my party if you can't get the time off, he said quietly. I mean, I want you there, but I know Mom and Dad have been pressuring you about it. What do you mean? Jake finally met my eyes. Maya, I'm not blind. They treat you differently. They always have. I used to think it was because you were older, or because you were more independent, but... He shrugged. Sometimes I feel guilty about it. My throat tightened. Jake, you don't have anything to feel guilty about. Don't I? Like when Dad bought me that car for my 18th birthday after you'd been taking the bus for 4 years. Or when they paid for my SAT prep course but told you to use Khan Academy? He took a massive bite of his sandwich. They love me, but they like me. With you, it's like they're always waiting for you to disappoint them. If only he knew how right he was. Had they ever mentioned anyone named Sarah to you? I asked before I could stop myself. Jake frowned, chewing slowly. Sarah? No, I don't think so. Why? So they kept their secret from him too. Of course they had. Jake was born in 2003. 4 years after my arrival had helped them bury their grief deep enough to try again. By the time he came along, I'd already been molded into the family disappointment, leaving him free to be simply their son, not a replacement for anyone. Just someone Mom mentioned at work, I said. Forget it. But I wouldn't forget it. Not any of it. 3 weeks until Jake's graduation party. 3 weeks to decide if I was going to let them continue this charade or finally force them to face what they'd done. The memorial garden receipts felt heavy in my pocket as I headed back upstairs. The next morning, I called in sick to both my jobs and spent the day researching. If I was going to confront them, I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with. I started with Sarah Elizabeth Morrison's death certificate, which I found through the county records office online. Sudden infant death syndrome. No warning, no explanation, just a healthy 3-month-old baby who stopped breathing in her sleep on June 8, 1999. The obituary in the local newspaper painted the picture I expected. Sarah Elizabeth Morrison, beloved daughter of Richard and Linda Morrison, passed peacefully in her sleep. She is survived by her devoted parents, who describe her as their perfect angel. In lieu of flowers, donations may be made to the SIDS Foundation. What I didn't expect was finding my own birth announcement just 2 weeks later. Richard and Linda Morrison joyfully announced the arrival of Maya Rose Morrison, born June 18 at 6:47 a.m., weighing 7 pounds 2 ounces. Maya brings new hope to her grateful parents. New hope. They'd literally announced me as Sarah's replacement in the newspaper. I kept digging. Social media posts from my mother's Facebook page revealed an entire shrine I'd never known existed. Every March 15th for the past 23 years, she posted the same baby photo of Sarah with the caption "Happy birthday to our angel in heaven." Forever 3 months old, forever perfect, forever missed. The comments on these posts made my stomach turn. Friends and relatives I'd known my entire life offering condolences for a sister whose existence had been hidden from me. My Aunt Carol's comment from last year stood out. I still remember how radiant you were with her, Linda. Maya and Jake are blessed to have such a loving mother, but I know Sarah will always hold a special place in your heart. Maya and Jake are blessed. Even my own aunt saw me as an afterthought to their grief. But it was the private Facebook group that nearly broke me, Parents of SIDS Angels, where my mother had been an active member for over 2 decades. I couldn't access the full posts, but the preview snippets were enough. Linda Morrison, sometimes I look at my living children and feel guilty for not appreciating them more, but the angel-baby connection is just different. Linda Morrison, struggled with Mother's Day again this year. My daughter Maya made me breakfast in bed, which was sweet, but all I could think about was how Sarah would be 24 now. Linda Morrison, anyone else feel like their rainbow baby never quite filled the hole? I love Maya, but she's so different from what Sarah would have been. Rainbow baby. I'd heard the term before, babies born after infant loss. But somehow seeing myself reduced to that clinical label made everything worse. My phone rang. Mom. Maya, honey, where are you? Your manager at Target called looking for you. The fake concern in her voice, the same tone she'd used when I was 7 and having problems, made my jaw clench. I'm sick, I said. Oh no, what's wrong? Do you need me to bring you soup? 22 years old, and she still treated me like a child when it was convenient. Where was this maternal instinct when I was struggling with rent last month? I'm fine, Mom. Just need rest. Well, I hope you feel better soon. We really need to finalize the catering numbers for Jake's party. I was thinking we should do a slideshow of family photos, show everyone how proud we are of both our children. Both our children. Not all three. Actually, Mom, I think a slideshow is a great idea. I could put it together for you. I've gotten pretty good with that stuff. The offer seemed to surprise her. Really? That would be wonderful, honey. I have boxes of photos in the study you could go through. Perfect. I'll start this weekend. After I hung up, I sat in my empty apartment staring at my phone. 2.5 weeks until the party. 2.5 weeks to create a slideshow that would finally tell the truth about our family. My laptop sat open on the coffee table, still displaying Sarah's obituary. Forever 3 months old, forever perfect, forever loved more than I would ever be. But Maya Rose Morrison, the disappointing replacement, was about to become unforgettable. I spent Saturday afternoon at my parents' house, ostensibly going through photo albums for Jake's graduation slideshow. My mother hovered for the first hour, pointing out the best pictures of you kids while carefully steering me away from certain boxes. Those are just old receipts and paperwork, she said when I reached for a banker's box labeled 1999 to 2003. Nothing interesting for the slideshow. The irony wasn't lost on me. Even now, she was protecting Sarah's secret. Once Mom left to run errands, I had free reign of the study. What I found in her desk drawer made my carefully controlled anger spike into something sharper. A checkbook register going back 5 years, with monthly entries I'd never noticed before. $200 Sarah's garden maintenance. $150 memorial flowers. $75 grief counseling group. They'd been paying for grief counseling. For 23 years, they'd been working through their loss with professional help while telling me I was too sensitive when I'd asked about therapy for my anxiety in high school. But it was the letter buried in a manila folder that made me understand just how deep this went. The letter had read Henley and Associates Family Psychology and was dated 6 months ago. Dear Mr. and Mrs. Morrison, thank you for attending our consultation regarding your concerns about Maya's upcoming 22nd birthday. As we discussed, milestone birthdays can be particularly challenging for replacement children, often triggering what we call identity crisis periods. Your instinct to maintain boundaries around Sarah's memory is understandable, but I continue to recommend disclosure. Maya's recent struggles with depression and employment may be symptoms of unresolved attachment issues stemming from the family secret. The photographs and mementos you described keeping would not necessarily be traumatic for Maya to see. In fact, learning about Sarah might help her understand her place in the family dynamic and potentially improve your relationship with her. I understand your concerns about ruining Sarah's memory, but please consider that honoring one daughter doesn't require sacrificing another. If you decide against disclosure, I recommend individual therapy for Maya and continued family counseling for yourselves. Best regards. Dr. Patricia Henley. My hands shook as I read it twice, then a third time. 6 months ago, they'd been discussing telling me about Sarah. 6 months ago, a therapist had recommended helping me understand why I'd never felt loved. Instead, they'd chosen to protect their dead daughter's memory over their living daughter's mental health. I photographed the letter, along with the checkbook entries. The evidence was mounting into something undeniable. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake. Mom wants to know if you can stay for dinner. She's making your favorite chicken parmesan. Chicken parmesan wasn't my favorite. It was Sarah's, according to one of the journal entries I'd memorized. Mom had written about planning Sarah's first birthday menu and choosing chicken parmesan because even at 8 months, Sarah seemed to love the smell of garlic and herbs. I'd eaten that meal every birthday for 22 years, thinking my mother was trying to make me happy. Can't stay, I texted back. But I got some great photos for the slideshow. That wasn't a lie. I'd photographed everything, the therapy letter, the financial records, even the hidden baby album I'd found tucked behind family Christmas photos. But I'd also selected legitimate photos for a real slideshow, the kind that would make my parents beam with pride right up until the moment I revealed the truth. Because I'd made my decision. Jake's graduation party was going to be perfect right up until dessert, when the slideshow would shift from celebrating our happy family to exposing 23 years of lies. Every relative who'd commented on my mother's Facebook memorial posts would finally understand why Maya Morrison had never quite measured up. I'd spent my entire life wondering what was wrong with me. In 2 weeks, my parents would finally learn what was wrong with them. The only question left was whether I'd have anywhere to call home when it was over. But maybe that was a price worth paying for the truth. The week before Jake's graduation party, I made a mistake that almost ruined everything. I was at my parents' house again, supposedly putting finishing touches on the slideshow, when Jake walked into the study and caught me photographing one of the therapy letters with my phone. What are you doing? He asked, frowning at the document in my hands. My heart hammered against my ribs. Just documenting some old paperwork for Mom. You know how she is about organization. But Jake was smarter than I'd given him credit for. He stepped closer, reading over my shoulder before I could hide the letter. Replacement children? Maya, what the hell is this? The paper trembled in my hands. I watched my little brother's face change as he processed Dr. Henley's words, saw the exact moment he understood what replacement meant. There was another baby, I said quietly. Before me. Her name was Sarah. Jake sank into Dad's leather chair like his legs had given out. That's impossible. They would have told us. Would they? I pulled out my phone and showed him one of the journal entries I'd photographed. Read this. From Dad's journal, written on your 8th birthday. His face went pale as he read. Jake reminds me so much of how Sarah might have been at 8, curious, athletic, easy to love. With Maya, every milestone felt like a reminder of what we'd lost. But Jake feels like a fresh start, a son we can love without the shadow of grief. Jesus Christ, Maya. Jake's voice was barely a whisper. How long have you known? 2 weeks. I found everything in the attic, photos, journals, financial records. They'd been maintaining a memorial garden for her this whole time. Spending thousands of dollars every year while telling me there was no money for college. Jake was quiet for a long moment, staring at the therapy letter. When he finally looked up, his eyes were red-rimmed. This explains so much. The way they treat you differently, the way Mom gets that distant look sometimes. God, Maya, I'm so sorry. It's not your fault. Isn't it? I've been benefiting from this my whole life. They projected all their hopes onto me because I wasn't. He gestured helplessly at the letter. Because I wasn't you. I sat down across from him, suddenly exhausted. What am I supposed to do with this, Jake? How do I live with knowing they chose to love a ghost instead of me? You confront them. Tonight. Right now. I can't. Not yet. I took a shaky breath. I'm going to do it at your party. Jake's head snapped up. What? Maya, no. That's not. It's the only way they'll have to face the truth instead of just making more excuses. When everyone they care about impressing is there watching. You'll destroy the whole family. Mom and Dad, yeah, but what about Grandma Morrison? Aunt Carol? They don't deserve to be blindsided like that. He was right, but I was too far gone to care. They all knew about Sarah. I found the Facebook comments, Jake. Every single one of them has been offering condolences for their angel baby while watching me struggle and never once thinking to tell me why my own parents couldn't love me. So you're going to blow up my graduation party for revenge? The accusation stung because it was partially true. This isn't about your graduation. It's about 22 years of wondering what was wrong with me. Jake stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. What if I asked you not to? What if I said please, Maya, find another way? My chest tightened. Jake was the one person in this family who'd never made me feel like a disappointment, and now I was about to drag him into my war. I'll make sure everyone knows this isn't about you, I said finally. You're innocent in all this. That's not the point. If you do this, there's no taking it back. They'll never forgive you. I looked at him standing there in his graduation cap from the ceremony earlier that week, so young and hopeful, still believing our parents were fundamentally good people who'd just made mistakes. Maybe he was right. Maybe there was still time to find another way. Or maybe some truths were worth burning everything down for. You have until tomorrow night, Jake said finally, his voice steady but strained. Talk to them first. Give them one chance to tell you the truth themselves before you detonate this nuclear bomb. I wanted to argue, but something in his expression stopped me. And if they don't? If they lie to my face again? Then I'll help you with a slideshow. The words hung between us like a treaty. My little brother, who'd spent 18 years as the golden child, was willing to help me expose our parents' lies. The weight of that gesture nearly broke my resolve. Okay, I whispered. 24 hours. But even as I agreed, I was already planning what I'd say to them. How do you casually bring up a dead sister your parents have hidden for over 2 decades? Hey Mom, while I was looking for my yearbooks, I found some interesting journals and a whole shrine to the daughter you actually wanted. The next evening, I sat in their living room at 7 p.m. sharp, palms sweating against the leather couch I'd done homework on for 12 years. Mom was in the kitchen putting finishing touches on appetizers for tomorrow's party. Dad was in his study, probably reviewing the speech he'd give about Jake's achievements. Neither of them had any idea their secret was about to implode. Mom, Dad, can you come in here? I need to talk to you both about something important. They appeared within minutes, looking mildly concerned but not alarmed. Mom wiped her hands on her apron, the same floral one she'd worn for every family gathering I could remember. What's wrong, honey? She asked, settling beside Dad on the opposite couch. You look upset. For a moment, looking at their familiar faces in the warm lamplight, I almost chickened out. These were still my parents, despite everything. The people who'd taught me to ride a bike, who'd stayed up with me when I had pneumonia at age 10, who'd cheered at my high school graduation even if their pride felt hollow. But then I remembered the journal entry about my 5th birthday tantrum, how they'd wished I was more grateful like Sarah would have been. I found the box in the attic, I said quietly. Sarah's box. The change was immediate and devastating. Mom's face went completely white, one hand flying to her throat. Dad's jaw tightened, his knuckles going rigid where his hands rested on his knees. Maya. Mom's voice was barely audible. I know about the journals. The Memorial Garden. The therapy consultation 6 months ago where Dr. Henley told you to tell me the truth. My voice stayed surprisingly steady. I know you spent 23 years loving a dead baby more than your living daughter. Dad leaned forward, his face flushing red. You had no right to go through our private things. I had no right? The words exploded out of me. I had no right to understand why my own parents had treated me like a consolation prize my entire life. That's not, Mom started, but I cut her off. We could never love Maya the way we loved Sarah, I quoted from memory. That's from your journal, Mom. March 2018. My 19th birthday. Mom's composure cracked, tears spilling down her cheeks. You don't understand. Losing a baby changes you. It breaks something inside that never fully heals. So you broke me instead. The silence stretched between us, thick with 23 years of unspoken truth. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. What do you want, Maya? Do you want us to apologize for grieving our daughter? I want you to apologize for never loving yours. His face hardened. We do love you. No, I said, standing up. You love the idea of loving me. There's a difference. I headed toward the door, Jake's 24-hour deadline officially expired. Maya, wait, Mom called out, but I was already gone. Tomorrow's slideshow was back on. The morning of Jake's graduation party, I woke up to 17 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic texts from my mother. Maya, please call me back. We need to talk before the party. I'm coming over. Your father thinks we should cancel everything. That last one made me sit up straight. Cancel Jake's party? They'd been planning this celebration for months, had invited 43 people, ordered a custom cake from the expensive bakery downtown. The fact that they'd even consider canceling meant they understood exactly what I was capable of doing. I was brushing my teeth when someone pounded on my apartment door at 8:47 a.m. Through the peephole, I saw both my parents standing in the hallway looking like they hadn't slept. Mom clutched a manila envelope against her chest like armor. Maya, open the door, Dad called out. We know you're in there. Part of me wanted to ignore them, to let them stand there panicking until it was time to get dressed for the party. But curiosity won. I opened the door but didn't step aside to let them in. What do you want? Mom's eyes were swollen from crying, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. We brought you something. Things we should have shown you years ago. She held out the manila envelope with shaking hands. Inside were more photos of Sarah, but also ultrasound pictures, hospital bracelets, and something that made my breath catch, a birth certificate that listed me as Maya Sarah Morrison. We gave you her middle name, Mom whispered. We wanted part of her to live on through you. The revelation hit me like a physical blow. My middle name wasn't just some random choice, it was another way they'd tried to resurrect their dead daughter through me. Every time someone said my full name, they were remembering Sarah. You named me after her, I said, my voice hollow. Even my identity is just a memorial. Dad stepped forward. That's not how we meant it. We thought. You thought you could turn me into a replacement and I'd never figure it out. I looked down at the birth certificate again. Maya Sarah Morrison. Does Jake know his middle name means something, or is David just David? The guilty look that passed between them was answer enough. Jake David Morrison, named after Dad's father, a normal family tradition. Not a grief ritual. Maya, please. Mom's voice broke. We made mistakes. Terrible mistakes. But if you do whatever you're planning today, you'll hurt innocent people. Jake worked so hard for this day. And I worked hard my entire life trying to earn love that was already given to a dead baby. I handed the envelope back to her. You have 3 hours to tell Jake and the family the truth yourselves. If you don't, I will. Dad's face darkened. You're trying to blackmail us. I'm giving you a chance to control the narrative. That's more than you ever gave me. After they left, I sat on my couch staring at my laptop screen. The slideshow was ready, 47 slides that started with normal family photos and gradually revealed the truth. Wedding pictures, baby photos of Jake and me, birthday parties, Christmas mornings. All the moments that looked perfect from the outside. And then, starting at slide 32, the Sarah photos. The journal entries. The financial records showing thousands spent on memorial flowers while they'd refused to help with my student loans. The final slide was the therapy letter from Dr. Henley, blown up large enough for everyone in the backyard to read clearly. My phone buzzed with a text from Jake, whatever happens today, I love you. You're my sister, and that means something. I typed back, I love you too. I'm sorry. At 2:15 p.m., I got dressed for the party. The party was already in full swing when I arrived at 3 p.m., carrying my laptop in a canvas bag that felt heavier than it should. The backyard looked perfect, white tablecloths, centerpieces of blue and gold, Jake's school colors, and a projector screen set up near the patio for the slideshow I was supposed to present after dinner. 43 people milled around the lawn, plates loaded with Mom's famous spinach dip and mini quiches. Relatives I hadn't seen in months, Dad's colleagues from the insurance office, neighbors who'd watched Jake and me grow up. All of them here to celebrate the golden child's achievement. Maya. Aunt Carol swooped in for a hug, her perfume overwhelming. You look lovely, honey. Your mother says you put together the whole slideshow yourself, how wonderful. I forced a smile. It was my pleasure. I think everyone will find it very illuminating. If she noticed the edge in my voice, she didn't show it. Well, I can't wait to see all those old photos. Remember when you and Jake were little? You were always so dramatic about everything. She laughed. Your mother used to say you felt everything twice as deeply as other children. Because I was trying to feel enough for 2 children, I thought but didn't say. Across the yard, I spotted my parents near the grill, both of them watching me with barely concealed anxiety. Dad flipped burgers with mechanical precision while Mom chatted with Mrs. Henderson from next door, but their eyes kept darting my way. They hadn't told anyone. I could see it in their posture, in the way they'd arranged themselves with clear sight lines to me like I was a bomb that might go off. Which, I supposed, I was. Jake appeared at my elbow, handsome in his navy graduation suit. Hey. How are you holding up? Ask me in 2 hours. He glanced toward our parents, then back at me. They tried to convince me to delay the slideshow. Said there were technical issues. And? I told them the show must go on. His voice was quiet but firm. Whatever you decide to do, Maya, just remember that some of these people actually care about you. Grandma Morrison drove 4 hours to be here. Aunt Lisa brought the twins even though Tommy's been sick. I looked around the yard with fresh eyes. Grandma Morrison sat in her lawn chair by the roses, looking frail but determined at 86. My cousins chased each other around the apple tree Dad had planted when I was 12. Uncle Pete was deep in conversation with Jake's high school baseball coach, probably reliving every game from senior year. These people had known about Sarah, their Facebook comments proved it, but they'd also been part of my life. They'd given me birthday presents, attended my high school plays, asked about my jobs and relationships with what seemed like genuine interest. Was I really going to traumatize all of them for the sake of exposing my parents? Maya, sweetie. Mom appeared beside us with forced brightness, her smile brittle as glass. Could you help me in the kitchen for just a moment? I want to make sure the slideshow laptop is set up properly. Jake squeezed my shoulder. I'll come too. Actually, Jake, your grandmother was asking for you, Mom said quickly. Something about your college plans. I followed her inside, leaving Jake torn between protecting me and honoring his grandmother. The kitchen was empty, afternoon sunlight streaming through windows that overlooked our childhood battleground. Maya, please. Mom's composure finally cracked completely. I'm begging you. Not for us, for Jake. This is his day. Every day has been Jake's day, I said quietly. When is mine? She flinched like I'd slapped her. What do you want? Money? We can help with your student loans. Or you could move back home while you finish school. We'll pay for everything. The offer hung between us. Financial security in exchange for keeping their secret. It was almost insulting how little they thought my silence was worth. I want you to stand up in front of everyone and tell them about Sarah. Tell them why you've spent 23 years treating me like a disappointment. Mom's face went white. I can't do that. Then I will. Through the window, I watched Dad manning the grill while Uncle Pete told some animated story. Jake was indeed with Grandma Morrison now, helping her to the dessert table early because her arthritis was acting up. In 30 minutes, dinner would be over. In 30 minutes, everyone would gather around the projector screen expecting a heartwarming tribute to the Morrison family's success story. Instead, they were about to get the truth. At 4:47 p.m., everything changed. I was in the bathroom, splashing cold water on my face and trying to calm my nerves before the slideshow, when I heard Jake's voice through the thin wall separating the powder room from Dad's study. You need to tell me the truth. Right now. All of it. My hand froze on the towel. Jake wasn't supposed to confront them yet. We'd agreed I'd handle everything. Jake, this isn't the time, Dad's voice, strained and tired. When Maya shows that slideshow in 20 minutes, is it going to destroy our family? The silence that followed was damning. I pressed my ear against the wall, hardly breathing. Mom's voice came out as a whisper. She found things she wasn't supposed to find. About Sarah. I know about Sarah. Jake's voice was steady, but I could hear the underlying anger. What I want to know is how bad this really is. Because Maya showed me one journal entry, and it was pretty fucking terrible. Language, Dad said automatically, then seemed to realize how ridiculous that sounded given the circumstances. No, Dad. No more deflecting. Maya has been planning something nuclear for 2 weeks, and you two have been walking around like ghosts. Either you tell me everything right now, or I walk out there and tell everyone that this party is over. Through the wall, I heard papers rustling. Then Mom's shaky voice. After Sarah died, we weren't good parents to Maya. We tried, but everything reminded us of what we'd lost. Maya was supposed to help us heal, but instead she just made the grief worse because she was so different from what Sarah might have been. Jesus Christ, Jake breathed. How different? Sarah was calm. Peaceful. Maya was colicky, demanding, difficult from the moment she was born. We kept waiting for her to become easier to love, but she never did. My legs nearly gave out. Difficult from the moment I was born. They'd been disappointed in me before I could even hold up my own head. Dad's voice joined in. We went to therapy for years. Dr. Henley kept telling us we needed to process our grief separately from our relationship with Maya, but we couldn't. Every milestone Maya hit just reminded us that Sarah would never hit those milestones. So you gave up on her. We tried to love her the same way. Bullshit. Jake's voice was sharp enough to cut glass. You gave me a car, Dad. You paid for my SAT prep, my senior trip, my graduation party. Maya worked 2 jobs through high school just to afford gas money. That was different. By the time you were born, we'd learned to separate our grief from our parenting. No, you just decided Maya was the grief child and I was the fresh start. The papers rustled again. Then Mom, barely audible, we set up a college fund for Sarah before she was born. $25,000. When she died, we couldn't bear to touch it, so we transferred it into Jake's name instead. My knees buckled. I sat down hard on the closed toilet seat, the room spinning around me. $25,000. Sarah's college fund, given to Jake while they told me there was no money for my education. I'd taken out student loans, worked myself into exhaustion, lived on ramen noodles and generic cereal, while Jake's future was secured with money that was meant for a dead baby. Maya doesn't know about the college fund, Dad said quickly. We never told her. Well, she's going to find out in 15 minutes when she shows whatever evidence she's compiled, Jake said. Unless you walk out there right now and tell everyone the truth yourselves. We can't do that, Jake. It would destroy your grandmother. Your Aunt Carol. Everyone who knew Sarah. What about Maya? What about destroying her? The silence stretched so long I wondered if they'd left the room. Finally, Dad spoke. Maybe it's better if she just moves on. Gets her own place, builds her own life away from all this history. You mean disappears so you don't have to face what you've done. Jake, you don't understand. I understand that my sister has been living in hell for 23 years while I got handed everything on a silver platter bought with a dead baby's money. Footsteps approached the study door. I quickly flushed the toilet and ran the water, but my hands were shaking so badly I could barely turn the faucet handle. $25,000. The slideshow was no longer enough. When I stumbled out of the bathroom, Jake was waiting in the hallway, his face pale and drawn. Behind him, I could hear Mom and Dad's hushed, frantic voices still coming from the study. You heard, he said. It wasn't a question. I nodded, not trusting my voice. $25,000. Sarah's college fund, transferred to Jake while I'd eaten pasta with butter for dinner 4 nights a week because groceries were a luxury I couldn't afford. Maya, I swear I didn't know. About the money, about any of it. If I had. I know. My voice came out as a croak. You're not them. Through the kitchen window, I could see the party continuing in blissful ignorance. Aunt Lisa was helping Grandma Morrison back to her chair. Dad's boss from the insurance company was laughing at something Uncle Pete had said. Everyone looked so normal, so happy, completely unaware that in 10 minutes their picture-perfect family gathering was about to implode. We could still call this off, Jake said quietly. I could announce that there are technical difficulties with the slideshow. Give you time to figure out a different way. I thought about it for exactly 3 seconds. Then I remembered Dad's words from 30 seconds ago. Asterisk, maybe it's better if she just moves on. Gets her own place, builds her own life away from all this history, asterisk. Even now, knowing I'd discovered their 23-year lie, his solution was for me to disappear quietly so they wouldn't have to be uncomfortable. No, I said, surprising myself with how steady I sounded. They made their choice. They've had decades to make this right, and they chose to protect a dead baby's memory over their living daughter's mental health. Jake ran a hand through his hair, messing up the careful styling Mom had insisted on for photos. What about everyone else? Grandma Morrison, the neighbors, my friends from school? They'll survive learning the truth. I barely survived living with lies. From the study, I heard Dad's voice rise slightly. We can't let her do this, Linda. We have to find a way to stop her. How? Mom's reply was sharp with desperation. She has photographs of everything. Bank records, journal entries, medical files. What are we supposed to do, tackle our own daughter? We could cut off the power, Dad suggested. Kill the projector. Jake and I looked at each other. Our parents were actually plotting to sabotage their own son's graduation party rather than face the consequences of their actions. That's it, Jake said, his voice hard as granite. Maya, go get your laptop. Set it up. Jake, you don't have to. Yes, I do. He straightened his tie with sharp, angry movements. They just tried to figure out how to physically stop you from telling the truth. At my graduation party. That's not grief, Maya. That's selfish cruelty. I retrieved my laptop from the canvas bag I'd hidden behind the coats in the front closet. My hands were steadier now, purpose replacing anxiety. $25,000. Every journal entry where they'd wished I was more like Sarah. Every birthday cake flavored to a dead baby's imaginary preferences. As I connected the laptop to the projector, Mom and Dad emerged from the study looking like they'd aged 5 years in the past hour. Mom's makeup was smeared, her party dress wrinkled. Dad's face was red and blotchy, his jaw set in a grim line. Maya, Mom said, one last desperate attempt. Please. We'll do anything. We'll pay off your loans, buy you a car, help with rent. Just please don't do this. I looked at her for a long moment. My mother, who'd spent my entire life making me feel like I wasn't enough, was now offering to buy my silence with the very support she'd withheld for 2 decades. Where was that offer when I was 17 and choosing community college because I couldn't afford anything else? I asked. She had no answer. Outside, Uncle Pete was tapping his wine glass with a fork, calling for attention. Ladies and gentlemen, if we could gather around, Maya's put together a special slideshow for our graduate. 43 people began moving toward the projector screen, chattering excitedly. It's time, I told Jake. He nodded once, then walked outside to join our family and friends. I picked up the laptop remote and followed him into the backyard, where everyone I'd ever known was about to learn why Maya Morrison had never been good enough. The first slide appeared on the screen, celebrating Jake Morrison, a family story. Everyone applauded. Mom and Dad stood frozen by the patio door like condemned prisoners awaiting execution. I smiled and clicked to slide 2. The applause died down as the second slide filled the screen, a beautiful photo of baby Jake in Mom's arms at the hospital, both of them glowing with joy. Normal. Safe. Exactly what everyone expected to see. Our story begins with family, I said into the wireless microphone Jake had rented, my voice carrying clearly across the backyard. With love, loss, and the children who shape us. I clicked to slide 3, Jake's first steps. Slide 4, his first birthday party with a chocolate cake he'd actually requested himself. Slide 5, Christmas morning when he was 3, tearing into presents while Mom and Dad watched with genuine delight. The audience awed at all the right moments. Grandma Morrison dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. This was exactly the heartwarming family tribute they'd expected. But I could see my parents in my peripheral vision, standing rigid as mannequins. They knew what was coming. They could count slides just as well as I could. Slide 8 showed Jake and me together at ages 6 and 10, both of us grinning gap-toothed smiles at the camera. Jake wasn't our family's first child, of course. I came along 4 years earlier. More chuckles from the crowd. Uncle Pete called out, and we're still recovering from that. If only he knew. I clicked through more photos, my elementary school years, awkward middle school pictures, high school graduation where Mom and Dad's smiles looked slightly strained compared to their radiant joy in Jake's photos. The contrast was subtle enough that no one in the audience would notice unless they were looking for it. Slide 15, but every family has its secrets. A murmur went through the crowd. That was an odd transition for a graduation celebration. I saw Dad take a step forward, then stop himself. What was he going to do, tackle his own daughter in front of 43 witnesses? Slide 16 showed a photo I'd never seen before today, Mom and Dad at what looked like a memorial service, dressed in black, holding each other as they stood over a tiny white casket. The backyard went completely silent. Before Jake and I were born, I continued, my voice steady despite my hammering heart, there was Sarah Elizabeth Morrison. Born March 15, 1999. She lived for 3 beautiful months. Gasps rippled through the audience. I saw Aunt Carol's hand fly to her mouth, though she'd known about Sarah all along. Grandma Morrison looked confused, squinting at the screen like she couldn't quite process what she was seeing. But it was Mom's colleague from the hospital, Mrs. Patterson, who spoke first, Linda. I didn't know you'd lost a baby. Because they'd hidden Sarah from some people while memorializing her to others. Even their grief had been compartmentalized, shared only with those who'd known them before I was born. I was born 10 days after Sarah's funeral, I continued, clicking to slide 17, my own birth announcement from the newspaper, with its cruel New Hope language. The replacement baby. The consolation prize. Maya, stop this. Dad's voice carried across the yard, raw with desperation. But I was past the point of stopping. Slide 18 showed the first journal entry I'd found, Mom's words blown up large enough for everyone to read, asterisk nothing could ever replace our Sarah. Nothing. Asterisk. Jake moved to stand beside me, a gesture of solidarity that gave me strength to continue. Some of the younger kids were looking bored, but every adult in the backyard was transfixed with horror. For 23 years, I said, advancing to slide 19, I wondered why I never felt truly loved by my parents. Why nothing I did seemed good enough. Why Jake got opportunities one was denied. Slide 20 showed the bank records, $300 monthly payments to Morrison Memorial Gardens while my student loan applications were denied for lack of parental support. Mrs. Henderson from next door stood abruptly, her face pale. I think we should go. But nobody moved. It was like watching a car accident, too terrible to witness, too compelling to look away. Slide 21 showed the therapy consultation letter from 6 months ago, Dr. Henley's professional recommendation blown up in 12-point font for everyone to see. But it was slide 22 that made several people gasp audibly, a screenshot of Mom's Facebook post from this past March 15th, happy birthday to our angel in heaven. Forever 3 months old, forever perfect, forever missed. Posted on the same platform where she'd wished me happy birthday sweetie, with a generic cake emoji just 3 months later. Linda? Grandma Morrison's voice quavered from her lawn chair. Why didn't anyone tell me about Sarah? The question hung in the air like smoke. I watched Mom's face crumble as she realized that even their selective secret-keeping was being exposed. They'd told some relatives, hidden the truth from others, created layers of lies so complex they'd probably forgotten who knew what. Grandma, I said gently, they told some people about Sarah. Just not the ones who might ask uncomfortable questions about why they treated their living children so differently. Slide 23 showed the checkbook register with its monthly Memorial Garden payments. Slide 24 showed my student loan rejection letters. The math was simple enough for a 10-year-old to understand. Jake's friend Marcus shifted uncomfortably near the dessert table. Dude, maybe we should. Stay, Jake said firmly, his voice carrying across the yard. Everyone should see this. But it was slide 25 that broke something fundamental in our family dynamic. The college fund transfer documents I'd found buried in Dad's desk drawer, $25,000 moved from Sarah E. Morrison Education Fund to Jake D. Morrison Education Fund on his 5th birthday. Jake didn't know, I said quickly, seeing several faces turn toward my brother with confusion. He was 5 years old. But while I was taking out loans and working 2 jobs, Jake's college was paid for with money originally saved for a dead baby. Uncle Pete set down his beer with a sharp clink. Jesus Christ, Richard. Dad finally found his voice. You don't understand what it was like. Losing a child, it breaks you. We did the best we could. Your best? I clicked to slide 26, another journal entry from Dad dated on my 16th birthday. Maya's party was today. 16 years old and still trying so hard to make us proud. Sometimes I wonder if we damaged her by comparing her to Sarah, but then I remember how easy Sarah was, how peaceful, and I can't help thinking Maya's difficulties are just her personality. The backyard was cemetery quiet except for the sound of Mrs. Chin gathering up her purse and whispering to her husband that they needed to leave. But even as she said it, she didn't move. Nobody did. My difficulties, I repeated, my voice gaining strength. My personality. As if being desperate for your parents' love was a character flaw. Aunt Carol stood up slowly, her face ashen. Linda, I commented on those Facebook posts. 4 years. I thought Maya knew about Sarah. I thought, oh my God, I thought you told her. We couldn't, Mom whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. How do you tell a child they're a replacement? How do you not? Jake's voice was sharp as broken glass. How do you let her spend 23 years thinking she's broken? I clicked to slide 27, the receipt for Sarah's headstone engraving, updated just last year. $800 for new lettering that read, beloved first daughter, forever in our hearts. First daughter. The words hit the crowd like a physical blow. I heard Grandma Morrison make a small, wounded sound. Maya, she called out, her voice shaking. Come here, sweetheart. But I had 3 more slides to go. 23 years of being the unwanted replacement was about to become everyone's problem. Slide 28 showed the most damning evidence yet, a text message thread between Mom and Dad from just last month that I'd found on her old phone while looking for the slideshow photos. Dad, May 15th, 11:43 p.m., Maya called asking for help with rent again. Should we? Mom, May 15th, 11:47 p.m., we can't keep enabling her. Sarah would have been more responsible with money. Dad, May 15th, 11:52 p.m., sometimes I wonder what our lives would have been like if Sarah had lived instead. The collective intake of breath from 43 people was audible. I saw Jake's face go white, his fists clenching at his sides. Instead, I repeated into the microphone. Not also. Instead. Mrs. Patterson from Mom's work stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the patio stones. Linda, I can't. I'm sorry, but I have to go. But as she headed toward the gate, Uncle Pete's voice boomed across the yard. Sit down, Patricia. We're all going to see how this ends. The authority in his voice surprised everyone, including me. Uncle Pete had always been the family peacemaker, the one who smoothed over arguments at holiday dinners. 23 years, he continued, his eyes fixed on my parents. 23 years you let that girl think she wasn't good enough, while posting memorial tributes to a baby online. What the hell is wrong with you? Pete, please, Dad started. No, Richard. I commented on Linda's Facebook post too. We all did. Sweet Sarah, gone too soon. Forever in our hearts. Meanwhile, Maya's right there at family dinners looking like a kicked puppy every time you praised Jake for breathing. Grandma Morrison struggled to stand, her arthritic hands gripping her walker. Somebody help me understand this. Are you telling me I have a granddaughter who's been hurt, and a great-granddaughter who died that nobody told me about? The confusion in her voice was heartbreaking. At 86, she was sharp as ever but struggling to piece together decades of family secrets. Sarah died before you moved to Florida, Mom, Dad said quietly. We thought it would be easier if we just moved forward. Easier for who? Grandma's voice carried clearly across the yard. Maya, honey, come here right now. I set down the laptop remote and walked across the grass to her chair, acutely aware that 40-plus people were watching my every step. When I reached her, she grabbed my hand with surprising strength. How long have you known about your sister? 2 weeks, I whispered. Her grip tightened. And how long have you been hurting? The simple question broke something inside me. Always, Grandma. I've been hurting always. She pulled me down to her level and cupped my face in her weathered hands. Your parents are idiots, she said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Grief doesn't excuse cruelty to children. Behind me, I heard Mom start crying harder, but I couldn't bring myself to care anymore. There are 2 more slides, I told Grandma quietly. Show them, she said firmly. Show everyone what my son and daughter-in-law have done. I walked back to the laptop, Jake falling into step beside me. Slide 29 appeared on the screen, a photo I'd taken yesterday of Sarah's memorial garden. Elaborate stonework, imported roses, a bronze plaque, and fresh flowers that cost more than my monthly grocery budget. This is where they've been spending their love, I said. On a shrine to perfection that never had a chance to disappoint them. But it was slide 30 that finally shattered our family completely. The final text message, sent from Dad to Mom yesterday morning after I'd confronted them. Maybe we should just cut contact with Maya entirely. Start fresh without the constant reminder of what we lost. The silence that followed was deafening. The silence stretched so long I could hear the neighbor's sprinkler system kick on 3 yards away. 43 people stared at that final text message, Dad's words glowing on the 12-foot screen like a neon confession. Maybe we should just cut contact with Maya entirely. Then Grandma Morrison's walker hit the patio stones with a sharp crack as she struggled to her feet. Richard David Morrison, she said, her voice carrying the authority of 8 decades, you are no son of mine. The words rang across the backyard like a gavel. Dad's face crumpled as his own mother disowned him in front of everyone he'd ever wanted to impress. Mom, please. No. Grandma's arthritic finger pointed at him like an accusation. You don't get to call me Mom anymore. Maya is my granddaughter. The only granddaughter I have left, thanks to your cowardice. She turned to me, her eyes fierce despite the tears. Maya, honey, pack your things. You're coming home with me to Florida. The offer hit me like a lifeline I hadn't known I was drowning for. Grandma, I have jobs here, school. Florida has jobs and schools. What it doesn't have is parents who treat their living children like consolation prizes. Jake stepped forward, his graduation suit wrinkled from the humidity and stress. I'll drive her down. Help her get settled. I stared at my little brother, who was sacrificing his celebratory weekend to rescue me from the family that had failed us both. Jake, you don't have to. Yes, I do. His voice was steady, decisive. They gave me everything that should have been yours, Maya. The least I can do is help you start over somewhere they can't hurt you anymore. Aunt Carol approached slowly, her party dress stained with tears. Maya, I'm so sorry. All those years I commented on your mother's posts about Sarah, I thought you knew. I thought it was something you all processed together as a family. It's not your fault, I said, though part of me was still angry at every adult who'd participated in the secret while watching me struggle. Uncle Pete was gathering his family, his face dark with disgust. Linda, Richard, congratulations. You've officially become the family story that gets whispered about at weddings for the next 50 years. One by one, the guests began leaving. Some offered me awkward apologies, others just fled toward their cars without making eye contact. Jake's friends from high school looked shell-shocked, probably never having witnessed an entire family implode over graduation cake and lemonade. By 6:30 p.m., only 8 people remained in the backyard, Jake and me, Grandma Morrison, Uncle Pete and Aunt Carol with their kids, and my parents, who stood by the patio door like strangers at their own party. Mom finally found her voice. Maya, we never meant for it to go this far. I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in 23 years, I felt nothing. Not anger, not hurt, not even disappointment. Just emptiness where parental love should have been. I know, I said quietly. You never meant for anything. That's the problem. Dad stepped forward, his face red and desperate. We can fix this. Family therapy, whatever you want. I want you to leave me alone, I said, surprising myself with how calm I sounded. I want you to grieve Sarah without using me as a punching bag. I want Jake to keep his college fund because it was never really mine anyway. And I want to build a life somewhere that I'm not competing with a ghost. Jake hugged me tight, whispering in my ear, you're not broken, Maya. They are. As we walked toward Uncle Pete's car to follow Grandma Morrison to her hotel, I turned back once. My parents stood alone in their perfectly decorated backyard, surrounded by the debris of their 23-year lie. The memorial garden would keep getting fresh flowers. But Maya Sarah Morrison was finally free.